I should really be doing a series on what does not unmarry you. I've done videos before that says addiction doesn't unmarry you, pornography doesn't unmarry you, adultery, infidelity doesn't unmarry you, and even abuse does not unmarry you. Of course, the church, I got to say this every time because I see the comments and I know you haven't seen all of my videos, that the church does say if you are in an abusive situation, get out, get safe. But the church itself acknowledges you remain married and you are to pray that that person changes and that in the hopes of one day reconciling. But for the sake of this series, this comment that really started with my post once that said, only if you can be unbaptized can you be unmarried. Try it. Can't happen. The one I want to talk about today is the length of time since your divorce doesn't unmarry you. I recently talked to an old friend, and I love this man. He was a Protestant preacher for many years, and he one day converted to Catholicism. He was very excited about it. He's been a Catholic for about 15, 20 years. I cannot remember. Sadly, his wife of 40 some years passed away. And recently he told me that he's engaged and he is getting married to a wonderful woman who he met. Now he's 74. The woman is approximately his same age. And because he's a new Catholic, he and I were talking, and I said, well, you're going to get married in the Catholic Church. And I can't remember his comment, but the conversation came up. I said, well, you're allowed to, as long as she's never been married before. Is she a widow? And he said, no, she divorced, but she was just married for about a year, 40 years ago. And I said, if she was married in the if she was validly married, if she was married in the church, she's still married. And he was stunned. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, you, my friend, fulfilled your vow. You were married, your spouse died. You are free to marry. She is not free to marry. She needs to return to her first husband, assuming he's still alive, which, by the way, he is, because this man told me so. I said, or she needs to check and see if it was valid. Basically, what other people say is an annulment. Remember, I do not use the poor cultural language of going to get an annulment, because getting an annulment presumes it's something you can go order, pay for, and take off and get. It is not Catholic divorce. It is a process by which we see if a marriage existed in the first place. Were there any impediments? So, needless to say, this gentleman was quite shocked and he had to hang up. He's like, I don't know what to do with this. But I see this all the time. People will say, well, we've been apart 20 years. We were apart 30 years. We were apart 15 years. It was a short marriage. In my teen years, I should have never done it in the first place. Guys, if you are validly married, it doesn't matter if that marriage only lasted. Like a friend of mine whose son married, did everything right, then married in the Catholic Church. She was Catholic, he was Catholic. And then she left him before their first anniversary. But they're validly married. It was traumatic. Pretty rough situation there. And we do believe the woman was probably having an affair and she started the affair just before the marriage. We don't know. But they're married. Now, of course, if she did start an affair before she got married and didn't intend for it to be permanent, now let the church decide on that. But if she wasn't having an affair and they did marry, he's married. So my job with these videos is to constantly be going back to the church. I am not God. You are not God. The Pope is not God. But all of us are supposed to be pointing each other back to Holy Mother Church, the institution, the bride of Christ on this earth. So I can't make up the rules, but I can tell you what they are. They are a little bit confusing and they are a little bit discombobulated and they are very much underreported these days. There's been a lot of confusion. There's been a lot of intentional going against church teachings. But we need to stay faithful to Holy Mother Church. It is not about what Christine Bacon thinks. It is not about what your family thinks. It's not about what your so-called ex, who's really not an ex, it's your spouse, thinks. All that matters is what God thinks. And guys, I'm just trying to prepare you for that moment you stand in front of God and he said, you knew that your marriage was valid, and yet you chose to disobey. You heard that lady on that video years ago to say, at least look into it. And you chose to say, I don't care what she says. I don't care if you believe me, don't believe me, love me, hate me. Just love God and go look into his words. I just want what's best for you and for me. I want to get some souls in heaven. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching another informational Bacon Bit. And I'd like to remind you always to live your life sunny side up.